Welcome to the Pewtercast. I'm Brent Allen, your host, and this is episode 27, Sweeping the Panthers, Part 2. Well, it's finally here, Pewtercast fans. Now, I know many of you have been anticipating this episode to come out. I know because I've received your messages and some emails and some tweets from you guys. And you guys may remember that last week we released Part 1 of this episode. And as you were listening to that episode may have felt a little short, or at least it came to an abrupt ending. Well, that's because when Ren Daxt and I, our guest for this week, and last week actually as it turns out now, sat down to record the final episode of the 2016 season, it turned out to be this supersized, giant long episode when we put everything together. So last week what we did was we put out as kind of a part one what is typically just the first segment of the show, which was a game review. And then the show just sort of ended. And I promised we'd be back with the top three in our conversation segments. And here we are, finally. Now, truly, guys, I had intended to get this out within like a day or so of the first part last week. And some of you may know that when I work, I tend to travel. And my travel days tend to be, I'm leaving on a Thursday, maybe a Friday, and I'm gone Saturday. Sometimes I don't get home till late on Sunday, but usually it's in the very wee hours of Sunday morning when I'm pulling into the driveway. Everybody is asleep, and I'm just sort of crawling into bed for an hour or two before the kids wake up. Well, guys, last week what happened was I actually got a call that I needed to go out a day earlier than I normally do. And then when I got home, there's just been lots of family time this week. We had our first snow. Actually, it's usually our only snow of the entire year right here in South Carolina. And there was sledding, and there was cold, and there was snow angels, and there was cold, and there were snowball fights, and it was cold. And did I mention I was cold? But guys, I guess you could take the man out of Florida, but you can't take the Florida out of the man. You know what I'm saying? Well, guys, all of that to say, honestly, I just haven't been able to get into the studio to put the finishing touches on this second half until now. Now, guys, before we jump into the episode, I did want to let you guys know just a little bit about our off-season schedule. It's taking shape. It's actually, I'm really liking the way it's looking like we're going to be able to go. We've got some great guests lined up. We've got a few other surprises that will be coming your way here through the off-season. And it is looking like you're probably going to be getting an episode about every other week through the off-season. It's kind of an ish. Of course, there's always bonus content episodes that we can use to discuss immediate events of importance, or really anything we want. That's what bonus content episodes are for. So, guys, with that, I just want to say, make sure you stay subscribed to us on iTunes or Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Jabbercast, Overcast, YouTube, iHeartRadio, whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. We're on Google Play Music. If there's one that we're not on that you would like for us to be on, just shoot me an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to work on making that happen. You can also make sure you check us out at Rat Pack Sports Radio all off season as well. We've got some good content coming your way. Now, speaking of content, guys, let's get into this episode. Now, in part one, we took a look at the final game of the 2016 season, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the Carolina Panthers by 1 point. And we still ended the season with a win, because 1 point or 40 points, doesn't matter what the spread is, a win is a win is a win. It all goes into the scorebook at the same way. Now, we also talked about in that episode kind of some overall season performances and storylines throughout the year, which is what jumboed that one up just a little bit. Now, in part two, which is what you guys are going to hear today, Ren Daxt and I are taking a look at our top three turning points of this season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then we're going to round out the show with a fairly familiar segment at this point called Rants and Raves, where Ren and I had some really pointed things to say. So, guys, that's all coming your way right here on episode 27, Sweeping the Panthers, Part 2. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Right now for you, Pewtercast fans, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. And an Audible subscription makes the perfect gift for that loved one who loves to read but is always on the go. This month I'm recommending the book The Martian by Andy Weir. This is the novel that the Matt Damon movie is based on, and if you liked the movie like I did, then I know you're going to love this book. It's the story of an astronaut who is mistakenly left behind on the planet Mars and has to figure out how to survive until the next rescue mission can come get him in 4 years. And this is a rare time when I will tell you that due to the nature of how it's written, it's actually better to listen to the audiobook than it is to actually read the paper version of the book. To download your free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thepewtercast for your free audiobook. Welcome back to the Pewtercast. You're listening to episode 27, Sweeping the Panthers, and it's time for our top three. Today we thought we'd take a look really at our season as a whole as we're wrapping up the season, and we wanted to take a look at the key turning points that really got us to this spot with where we are, ending at 9-7, not making the playoffs, but really heading in a good trajectory for the team. But there's still some things that need to be shored up with the team for sure. So, Ren, I'm going to toss it to you first, man. Did you have any criteria when you were picking your list, and what is your number 3 key turning point for the season?
I didn't have any criteria. I did try to make it like positive and negative, as in things that might have turned the season on the downward scope as well as turning the season on the upward scope. I have more than 3 because I'm pretty sure everyone, as both of us, will probably throw in like the mini bye week, like the defensive turnaround. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure that's got to be in there somewhere, so I'm just going to put it in there, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to put in as number 3 I'm going to put in the Rams game as my number 3. We beat the Falcons. We're riding high. Game 1. Go to Arizona. Doug Martin gets hurt. Lots of turnovers. Arizona, we didn't know they were going to go, like whatever they went, like 6-10. We thought they were a Super Bowl contender. We had to travel all the West Coast. We had all those excuses going for us. And then the Rams came into town, who had not scored an offensive touchdown yet this year. And they put up 37 points against us at home. Our first home game of the year, and obviously we lost the game. Jameis threw a pick, had a strip sack for a touchdown. Running game wasn't going. The defense gave up a 3rd and 19 draw play for a first down. I think the Rams scored 2 touchdowns in the first 2 times they had the ball. It was not a good showing, and that was sort of the turning of the first half of the season with the fans. And you kind of started to realize that we're not the team that beat Atlanta. We're a lot closer to the team that got blown out by the Cardinals.
Yeah, I certainly can. I can certainly understand that, especially with it being the first home game and the idea that they hadn't scored an offensive touchdown yet. The idea, people still go back and when they point to 2 games that we should have won but we didn't. The Rams is always one of them.
Oakland.
The other one's going to be the Oakland game, right? But that Rams game is always one of them. And there's going into the Cardinals, going into Arizona at the Cardinals with as good as the Cardinals were last year. Now let's remember, this is Cardinals at the beginning of the season, not Cardinals at the end of the season for this year. The Cardinals at the beginning of the season were a stout team, and going into their stadium, I think they were just coming off of a loss, if I remember right. I might be wrong. Yep. Don't quote me on that. So they were amped up. Now there's no reason that we should have gone in and gotten blown out 40-7. Like that was just dumb. But you kind of understand that one a little bit. Like I think when people looked at the season and they kind of looked at the scores, they kind of went. Most people probably looked at the Cardinals and went, Yeah, let's give that one. Let's chalk that one up as a loss for the Buccaneers. I think most people probably did that. I still maintain I didn't think that there was a game on our entire schedule that we couldn't win this year. So, but I think most people probably did that. Coming into the Rams game, though, that was a game that we should have won. We knew that coming into the season. We knew, especially after losing to them on Thursday night the year before, Rams is just a team that's in shambles. To come in and have that kind of a game, I certainly can understand. That being sort of it was a motion setter really for the rest of the first half, honestly, of the year. Before we go, so yeah, I certainly can understand that. As far as criteria, honestly, I know you said you didn't have any, but you said specifically what my criteria was, which is I could pick either positive or negative things, and certainly this season was not a things started bad and everything just turned up throughout the course of the season. No. There were times when things went down. There were times when things went up. And so I really tried to look at things for that. And I didn't so much pick specific games as I did specific moments or things that I thought really impacted the season. And so for my number 3, I'm picking when Vincent Jackson went out on IR, when he got injured. And the reason I picked that is because it was from that moment on, and you go back and you remember Vincent Jackson, right? He was not having a good year heading up to his injury. Like he wasn't getting as many catches. He was dropping some balls that he just wasn't as productive as the Vincent Jackson that we had known in previous years. However, he's still a big guy, and he's still a guy that other teams had to game plan for. And when he went out, that meant that all of a sudden teams could just start planning for Mike Evans. And who did we have really left over besides Mike Evans? I mean, you guys remember, we had to go find guys off the street to try to bring in to seal that up a little bit. And at that point in the season, let's face it, you're not getting the cream of the crop. No, nothing against Cecil Shorts, who we brought in. Nothing against Russell Shepard, who is a wide receiver, but he's really our special teams guy. Nothing against Martino. Nothing against anybody on our practice squad. But when you're talking about the big guys, the elite guys, Mike Evans was really it. And after that point, things really kind of changed for Mike. Because we all know the last several games, even though Mike set these records, he still didn't get as many targets. Jameis had to check out of him because he was so well covered. And I think had we had Vincent Jackson, even if Vincent wasn't producing as much as he would have been, that would have taken some of the pressure off of Mike Evans and allowed for more things to happen. So for me, my number 3 turning point of the season, Vincent Jackson goes out on IR, which means Mike Evans is getting covered up for the rest of the year.
I like it. I'm kind of shocked I didn't really think of that. Yeah, because all your points are, they all make sense. They're exactly right. Yes, Vincent wasn't having a great year, but as soon as he went down, they could start rolling the safety or clouding or bracketing Mike. And the smart play was to go to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And the person they weren't going to was not Vincent Jackson. So, yeah, that really did change the season. He's been gone so long, you forgot all about it. He was even on the team almost.
Right. He and J.R. Sweezy are off in Hawaii somewhere, I think, I think the last sighting of either one of those two.
Yeah. Actually, did you hear, just real quick, did you hear about how Sweezy's they saw him cleaning out his locker and asked him, he said big thumbs up far as on track to be there next year?
That's what I've heard, which, it surprised me that he had anything in his locker to clean out, because from
bunch of floppy hats.
Exactly. I mean, everything that we heard is that they didn't even see him. He wasn't in practices. He wasn't in the meetings. He wasn't, of course the media is limited in the amount of times that they could be around. But they hadn't seen.
But they'd see him around the building. Like, I don't think he was in the state.
Yeah. I don't think they've seen much of Vincent Jackson either since he's gone on IR either. And from Mark Cook, I believe I've heard Mark Cook says that they tend to protect the injury guys from the media guys pretty well, and they can do that per league rules. So, I don't fully know what all the thinking is behind that, but yeah. So, but hey, listen, if Sweezy comes back next year, I am certainly glad for him to at least compete to get a spot back on the starting lineup for the offensive line, and maybe bolster something, a position group that really could use some depth and could use some help. So, well, guys, moving on from that, how about number 2, your number 2 turning spot for the season, Ren?
My number 2, I took 2 of them. I'm kind of combining into one.
Cheetah!
Yeah, sorry. I'm taking the hire of Dirk Cutter and the free agents that were brought in during the offseason as a turning point. The culture change, now that hindsight's 2020, so I get to see them play throughout the whole season. The bringing in of Robert Ayers, Brett Grimes, even Daryl Smith. People forget, Josh Robinson. He was a cornerback for the Vikings we brought in, and by the end of the year, the people in the know were clamoring for him to be a special teams All-Pro, Pro Bowler. So I'm putting those together as that's what really started changing around. I'm not a Lovey-hater either, but once he left, it just felt like a breath of fresh air because Dirk Cutter wouldn't he wouldn't flim-flam the media where hey, your defense is giving up 70% completion percentages, and Lovey would look you straight in the face and say, well, you can make statistics say whatever you want to. Well, I'm not 4 years old. That's not what's going on here. And when they hired Cutter and then the free agency class came in, there was definitely a change of attitude. It just seemed like the players wanted it more, like they're more invested. So those two together, I put them together because they're both in the off season. That would be my number 2 as a turning point for this season. Would be right at the beginning.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that. And really the crux of that, whether it was Cutter or some of these other guys coming in, the crux of that is the change in culture. It started the change in culture that we've had. And I 100% agree with you. I think that is a that's a fantastic pick. I don't have it on my list anywhere. But to be bringing in these new people, that's what you need. You've got to get out. You've got to get out of people. You've got to get the people out who have toxic characteristics or who will hold you back. And sometimes that means losing really good people. And I think that's really what happened with Coach Lovey and maybe even some of the other players. They're good people, but they just weren't right for what we were trying to build here. And you've got to get in the right people. And, Cutter, certainly it starts with him as the coach, but bring it in, I think there's a guy who's been just as responsible for culture change as anyone else. And I think that's Robert Ayers, getting him in. Listening to his radio show this last year, I've made it pretty well known that I think the Donovan and Allie show was the best show. And I still say that, but right behind that if you want to know the heartbeat of what's going on with the Bucs, it was the Robert Ayers show, of listening to what was going on there. So, it was they were smart moves, I thought, that they made. And it's why I'm really salivating at this offseason. And I was looking it up the other day. I don't think we can do anything with free agents until like March 4th or something like that. So, and that's when, or March 7th, I think it is. And that's when we can begin talking to our own guys. And then it's the 9th before we can start talking to other people. And, I can't wait to see, where we wind up going and what we wind up doing at that point. So, good pick, man. Good pick. For my number 2, I'm picking a moment that, people continue to talk about for weeks afterwards, but, it's not so much a moment and it's not a game in and of itself, but it's something that happened through a game. I'm talking about the Chiefs game where we were at Arrowhead Stadium, and it was Jameis Winston getting energized by the Chiefs fans doing the war chant, doing the tomahawk chop. And the reason I picked that is because, we'd gone out and we won big against the Bears the week before. But I think it was that moment when Jameis went in and we went into Arrowhead Stadium. We kept hearing about how loud Arrowhead is and how much it's just going to crush everything that we have going on. And it's like how loud all of that could get turned around and was used against the Chiefs. And I think it was that really kind of set us on the winning streak. Yeah, we had the Bears thing happen the week before, but I think it was that really set us up and moved us into the streak mindset that allowed us to go. And so the idea that Jameis was energized by the war chant, of course, people were talking, everywhere throughout Bucs Nation, do we do the tomahawk chop in Raymond James? Is that even allowed? Can we do that? I don't care. If it makes them play good, let's do that. Well, let's come up with our own chant now at Buccaneers. Whatever for people who thought that, but I think that was a real turning point going into Arrowhead Stadium, and Jameis just getting energized by that and setting us off on a winning streak.
Yeah, that was never heard of anything like that happening before. That was really strange. To take one of the loudest places in the NFL and make it feel, accidentally, of course, like home. He felt like he was just back at Doak Campbell, back in Tallahassee. That game, even without the chant, you can make a really strong argument for that Chiefs game being a big turning point in the season. That's not my number one, but just following up on what you were saying, because like you said, no offense to the Bears. I'm a Buccaneers fan. I've been a Buccaneers fan since they were inducted into the league. I understand when people say, well, but you beat the Bears. So if any Bears fans are listening, I'm not trying to be rude or condescending because I understand. But let's face facts. When people say, well, yeah, you beat somebody, but you beat the Bucs, you kind of okay, no big deal. And that's just where the Bears are right now as an organization. But then going into Arrowhead, playing the Chiefs, and they're like 17-1 or 17-2 in their last games. They hadn't lost a home game since like 1964, and all this stuff, and it was going to be cold, and Ken Aguayo kick, and Jameis is a warm weather quarterback, and we went in there, and Conte came up with the big interception late, and we won. But turning their war chant and making basically nullifying their home field advantage as far as their noise that was probably something nobody saw coming, including Chiefs fans. For my number one. I have a few left, but this one I like. Not only was it a turning point for the season, we talked about it a little bit. I also think its ripple effect is going to go into free agency and the draft, and that's the emergence of Keith Tandy, the Tandy Man. Right in the middle of our 5-game win streak, Conte went down. And then we got Keith Tandy, and no one was real happy with their safeties anyway. I know you're a big fan of Bradley McDougall, but he's more of like an offensive lineman. You never really heard his name,
right?
It's like, well, if you don't hear his name, then he's not giving up touchdowns and big receptions, but he's not making any plays either. So that's how I kind of feel like McDougall. Not saying he's, anything against him, but, he just didn't play like Tandy played. And Tandy came in and with those game-sealing interceptions back-to-back weeks, and then got 2 more on Sunday against Carolina. And like we said before, this is going forward as in it's sort of shifting the need of safety around because Conte and McDougall don't have contracts. Plus, Dirk Cutter said in his exit media interview that Ryan Smith is no longer a safety. He's going to cornerback. So that leaves Tandy and I believe a guy that's been on the practice squad all year. They signed a futures contract. I always want to call him Elliott, but it's not. Smith. Anyway, he's been on the practice. So that's who we have as far as our safeties that are under contract is Keith Tandy. And this futures guy. Obviously, it's going to be addressed, but his emergence has just kind of solidified the back end. We had Grimes, we had Hargraves, who knows is going to get better and better. He did kind of have a rough year. He did not have like a breakout rookie, oh my God, you're the best ever year, but it was extremely solid. And then Tandy came in and just kind of took the safety worry away, and that emergence of Tandy is going to flow forward through these transactions in the off season and have repercussions that are all going to be positive for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And just to defend my boy Bradley McDougald for just a second, you're right. I will give you that if you go back and you look at the tape, Bradley McDougald was in on just about every play. Like it was every time you'd look up in a tackle pile on the defense, Bradley McDougald, it always seemed like he was a part of that deal. However, how many interceptions did he get? How many touchdown saving pass breakups did he get? So there wasn't those huge plays coming out of him, but he was there and he was flying around. However, you compare that to what you just said, Keith Tandy. Man, he showed up and he showed out, and that's a fantastic pick. That whenever you can take a position of need and a position of worry and make people not worry about it that much anymore, that's a turning point. And that's something that all of a sudden you can focus in on and you can look at. And man, I think that's a great number one pick.
Thank you.
For my number one, I'm actually going to something that you kind of said you were going to put into your penalty box, but I'm going to dust it out. And I'm going to that blowout loss at Atlanta, to Atlanta at home. And specifically, the thing I'm talking about is, we saw Joe McCoy say it in the locker room interviews. We heard Dirk Cutter talking about it afterwards, but it was that idea that everyone after that game, because it was a blowout, right? It was a full on shellacking embarrassment, 43 to, we scored 28, but I don't know how many of those 28 points were in garbage time. I don't really remember, but it was not good. Mm-hmm. It was not good. And it forced this team at the midpoint of the year to look themselves in the mirror to an each man individually and each coach and say, we can't keep doing what we're doing. It's not working. And the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing you're doing and expecting a different result. We can't keep doing this. What's going to change? What's got to change? And they figured it out. And you know how we know they figured it out? Because they came back and they went 6-2 in the second half of the season after that game. Now, I don't know about you, but I'll take 6-2 on a half of a season any season whatsoever, because that's going to put us at 12-4. I'll take it twice every single year. Going 6-2 on a half part of the season. So, to me, when you talk about a turning point, when something that really shifted the momentum of this season, as much as I hate to say it, it was that loss. And sometimes we say that in sports, right? You can learn more from a loss than you can from a win. And I think this is a great example of a time when we learned more from a loss. We got more out of a loss than we would have had we won that particular game. I think just them going in, looking in the mirror. So I know you put that in your penalty docs, but I'm busting it out because it's my number one pick.
And I can't argue with it. If you ask any Bucs fan, any beat writer, any national NFL guy, any analyst, and you ask them what was the turning point of the Bucs season, that's it. The only reason I wrote it down, I just didn't want to use it because I thought we were just going to repeat ourselves. That's kind of the reason why I kind of threw the penalty box. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That was the turning point of the season. All the players have said it. All the coaches have said it. And yeah, you just can't argue with that. If you had to pick one, without, you want to be cute and be like, oh, free agents or, Keith Tandy. No, if you had to pick one, that's the one you have to pick, hands down.
Right. Well, I know you mentioned that you had a couple other honorable mentions. Go ahead and throw them out there for us real quick.
Well, I only have one left because you covered a couple of them yourself. Was the Cowboys game. I think after the Saints game, the defense was riding high. Right in the middle of that 5-game win streak. They're not giving up a lot of points. They're making game-ending interceptions. Then we went on the big stage again and, didn't look very good. The Cowboys, yes, it was 26, but they pushed us all over the field offensively. Like their offensive line pushed us everywhere. We didn't get a lot of pressure. Zeke Elliott, when he did get hit near the line of scrimmage, was still getting 3 or 4 yards. He was carrying guys. it was when the Bucs learned, they have this 5-8 winning streak. They're feeling good and like, we can play with anybody. We're really good. And then they went in and played Dallas, and they found out that no, you're not. You're not really good. You would have to play a very good game to beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys would have to play an average game, and just to keep it close. And that's kind of what happened. And I think that game weighed a lot. It was really heavy as far as the defense, the offense, and the psyche of the team to be able to get up for the Saints game, which we all know now if we would have won that game, we would have been in. So I think the Cowboys game where it's kind of like crashing back to reality where, no, you got a lot of work to do on both sides of the ball, especially, the way it ended where, that was a UDFA defensive end they couldn't keep out of the backfield. They had the ball at midfield, chance to take the lead, got 4 yards on 3 plays. Like, it just wasn't good. And I think that had a lot, like I said, a lot to do with the Saints game, and just kind of made him coming crashing back down to earth. So that was like one of the 3 turning points that I could have talked about in the Bucs season.
Yeah, I have 2 honorable mentions, and that's one of them is the Dallas game. And the real reason to me why I think the Dallas game became a turning point was not so much the loss in and of Dallas, but I think it was the loss in Dallas that kind of gave way to the loss in New Orleans the following week. Had we gone in and won in Dallas, I don't believe we would have lost in New Orleans the following week. There would have been too much momentum. We would have been riding too much of a high, too much energy that I think would have rolled over into New Orleans the next week. So I just don't see us going into New Orleans and losing. I think having, kind of had some water doused on the streak, having that streak broken, whatever that did, I think, to the team mentally, which the team's got to figure this out. Okay, you can't allow something like that to go in and douse the fire, though that is certainly what can happen. And I think we saw that happen here with New Orleans. And then, of course, they got it back with the Panthers game, which was great. But as Greg Allman pointed out on the Locked On Bucs podcast, which, by the way, fans, if you're not listening to Locked On Bucs podcast, that's the place where you can get the news. All right. We kind of analyze the team here, right? We talk about things. If you just want pure news, like here's what physically has happened, here's the transaction that's going on. Greg Allman's Locked On Bucs podcast. Make sure you check that out. It's every day, Monday through Friday, like 15 minutes long. It's not very long at all. So check them out. I know they're kind of downshifting into an off-season schedule as well. But he was talking about it on the Locked On Bucs podcast. I was just saying, forget the Dallas game. If we flip-flopped the Panthers game and the New Orleans game, these last 2 games as far as a win-loss situation, even with a 9-7 record, we'd be in the playoffs right now if we had won in New Orleans but lost at Carolina. That whatever that would have done for conference records, or if we would have flip-flopped any AFC team that we had won, like even the Chiefs game, against any NFC team that we had lost to, like if we'd flip-flopped even any of those, we still would have wound up in the playoffs. So that's how close we were to being in the playoffs this year. And I think the what happened in Dallas carried over to us losing in New Orleans, which of course was a division game. And that to me is why, Dallas gets an honorable mention. I don't think it's one of my top 3, but it's definitely in as an honorable mention. And another honorable mention to me is when Doug Martin got hurt the first time. When he went out, of course that then sent us into this chasm for several weeks of trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do at the running back position, right? Like, so we put up Charles Sims, and then we bring in, who did we bring in? I think we brought in Jacquizz, and Jacquizz is in, and then we went out and got Antoine Smith, and then Charles Sims got hurt, so now Doug and Chuck Sims was out, and so now we've got Jacquizz, and we've got to figure out, with Peyton Barber, and, Reedy was a mix in there sometimes on practice squad, and it was just this revolving door, at running back. So I think that stymied our progress in what we could have done on offense. With really the distraction of, now Jacquizz came in and did great, and we all know that. And we give him a heads up, but there's always still this, we were looking out at the side of our eye going, well, when's Doug getting back? Especially coming off the year he had last year, right? When's Charles Sims getting back? Let's not put Charles, I said it a lot on this show, don't put Charles Sims in that feature back spot, put him in his spot. That's where we want to keep him. So, Doug Martin getting injured, to me was a turning point of the season, because it really created this havoc in the backfield with the running back position that took us a lot of weeks to really work out. So those are some honorable mentions for me. Well, fans, I'm going to throw this one back to you guys now. We'd like to know how your picks stack up against our picks. Were there any turning points in the season that we didn't talk about that you think might have been a big turning point? Well, let us know on Twitter at the Pewtercast or on Facebook.com/PewterCast. Or if you're a little bit more winded, shoot me an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Now, Ren, one time here before the final show, before we get out of here, let's take a look at this week's poll.
Real bad. Okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll? Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
All right. Well, for this week's poll, we were kind of looking at turning points. We were looking at various things. So I decided, let's ask, who is your Bucs MVP of 2016? Taking a look at the whole season, wrapping it up, taking a look. We mentioned Bryan Anger a little bit earlier in the show. So who was your 2016 deal? And I threw out Jameis Winston, of course. Mike Evans having a big one. Quan Alexander representing the defense. Or obviously I left a right-in option. So, Ren, let me throw this out to you. Who do you think was the Buccaneers MVP for this year?
Well, this one's pretty straightforward. I mean, kind of like back where are the three turning points. If you ask anybody, it has to be Mike Evans. Mike Evans is the MVP. Jameis had a good year, but he also led the NFC in turnovers as far as quarterbacks. Probably any player in the NFC. You can get cute and niche and make a argument for Bryan Anger. You can make an argument for Josh Robinson. Obviously Quan by leading the league in solo tackles. But as far as a position where numbers mean everything, and for carrying the team, as we've documented during the show, with absolutely no help. Yes, his numbers went down, but he got all the big, important throws. His catching percentage for first downs is the highest among receivers in the NFL. So putting all that together, it's Mike Evans. It just has to be Mike Evans.
Yeah, well, turns out 75% of the people who voted in this poll would absolutely agree with you, as would I. Mike Evans wins at 75%. Jameis actually came in at 17%. Quan got 4%, and then we also had a 4% on Tweet Back Your Own Choice, which people tweeted back Bryan Anger. So shout out to him. But certainly, as you point out, Mike Evans, here's the thing. When we talk about leadership, we've talked a lot about leadership, not just in the show, but around Bucs world and with Jameis. One of the great things is the best leaders are also the best followers. And one of the things I think that Jameis can pick up from Mike this year has been the humility that Mike has entered this year. Now, I'm not saying that Jameis is a proud guy or Jameis needs to go out and become a more humble guy, but I'm just saying how Mike has approached this season with everything else going on. I think he can actually lead Jameis in that. And that's why I say I'm so excited for Jameis to come back for his third year, because I just want to see what that transformation is going to be like, knowing that Mike had a big transformation coming out of into his third year. But for sure, Mike Evans, even when his targets went down, the targets that Mike had were the big ones. They were the touchdowns. They were the first downs that we needed. So he may not have been getting a lot of the little chip shots, but he was getting the ones that we really needed, especially at critical times. I don't know where we ranked in terms of our own third down completion rates, but I know we were very high, at least for a long time. We were very high. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this segment. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with our conversation segment, Rants and Raves. We'll be right back. Hey, Pewtercast fans, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for how you have been supporting this show. Whether you've simply subscribed to us on your favorite podcasting platform, or you've taken the time to communicate with us through social media, or have even gone the extra step to rate and leave us a review. Maybe you've left a monetary donation at paypal.me/thepewtercast, or you've taken advantage of your free audiobook at audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You have made this first year of the podcast truly more than I could have ever imagined. And if you or someone you know has a business that you would like to become an official sponsor of the show, please email me at thepewtercast@gmail.com and put sponsorship in the subject line. I would love the opportunity to discuss these options with you to help keep the Pewtercast going. So however you support the show, thank you. This would not be possible without you. And we're back. This is episode 27 of the Pewtercast, and for today's discussion segment, we're doing a fan favorite called Rants and Raves. And in this segment, what we do is Ren, you and I are both going to pick a topic that we're either going to be ranting about or we're going to be raving about, and I'm going to toss it to you first. Are you going to be ranting or raving tonight?
Both. I've got a rant and a rave, to be honest with you, and I have my rant. Or my rave is actually sort of a rant. I know it's very confusing, but when it's my turn, it'll all be done.
Well, it's your turn, so go ahead, take us there. What do you got for us?
Well, after the exit interview, the media exit interview for Dirk Cutter, during it he said something, alluded to the fact that he's looking at everything he's trying to change, improve the team, and actually given some thought about giving up the play calling duty. And that was the narrative and took over, Twitter and Facebook, and still going pretty strong as of now. First, I want everyone to just settle down. I understand you need to write a story, but you're really making something out of nothing. He kind of just said it in passing. And right after he said that, he said that play calling was his favorite thing about football. For me, please don't give up the play calling duties. I also agree that continuity is a big thing with football teams, especially a developing football team, especially a young quarterback. And honestly, I don't think he will be happy because the things that a head coach has to do, like the media and wearing all the hats and checking in on this guy and that guy, I don't think that's his favorite thing. I think his favorite thing is be able to call the plays, putting together a game plan. He admitted in the press conference that, what he likes about being the head coach is he's the boss. He gets the final say. If he could get the final say and be the offensive coordinator, that would be his job. I think everybody's making too much of this, and quite honestly, I do not want to. He said he has people in the building, a couple of people in the building that he trusts to make the play calls. I don't want to see it. I like the way he makes the play calls. The reason the red zone offense bogs down is not because of the play calls. It's because Jameis misses the throws. Watch the film. The guys are open. The play is right. He's dialed up the right play. It's just poor execution by Jameis. And don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping on Jameis. There is no quarterback in the whole entire league that I would rather, at his age, as a young quarterback, be, with his upside, be leading my team. A few weeks ago, I might have said, well, maybe Derek Carr. But Derek Carr now has a broken ankle, and you don't really know how that's going to come back. I'm sure he'll come back fine, but now that he's hurt, there is no one else I would rather have leading my team than Jameis Winston. But as far as him giving up play calling, everyone settle down. It's not going to happen. And if my 2 cents counts for anything, Dirk Cutter, please do not give up the play calling duties because I think you're excellent at it, and I want the continuity with you and Jameis to continue.
Yeah, I think you might find yourself on what would you call that? In the minority of people who would say that, because I think there's a lot of people who'd love to see what Dirk Cutter could do, or what this team could do if Dirk Cutter relinquished that to someone else. As for me, I'm kind of honestly 50-50 on it. I could see the benefits of him giving up the play calling duties to somebody else. Of course, he's still the head coach. At any point, he can override and say, no, call this play. No, you should do this. I think he might have a little bit of a hard time doing that if he were to give those up. But as you say, it's his favorite thing. And it is Dirk Cutter who really was responsible for helping to develop Jameis Winston in that rookie year. And to keep that continuity going, that was a big thing that we wanted when we hired Dirk Cutter, right? Was continuity. Keep the continuity. And that's going to be a big piece of it. You know, can Cutter learn how to be a head coach and be the play caller at the same time? Yeah, he can, and he's not going to nail it in one season, maybe even two. But there's a lot of head coaches that are also play callers. So, but he does have to have his eye on everything. And leadership principle 201 is you have to give away some of your authority sometime. And so I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, but I'm glad to know that there's someone who kind of thinks that he should hang on to it. And I'll be real interested to see where they go with that. I've got a rant, actually, speaking of Coach Cutter, that I would like to dive into. I was listening to Coach Cutter's final Bucs Radio Access show that they do on Monday nights. And it was real interesting. They did a call-in show, which I wish I could say they got that idea from me, but it's a fairly common idea. But they were doing a call-in show for Coach Cutter, and one of the things that the first couple times it didn't really flag my attention, but it kept happening, and every time it made me just a little bit more amped up. And I kind of felt like Coach Cutter was getting a little more with it, although he never said anything towards it. And what was happening was all these callers were calling in saying, "Hey, Coach, great season. Hey, Coach, just want to say good season. Hey, Coach, fantastic season that we just had." And here's the thing, guys. Here's my rant. The truth is, and I know you guys were calling it's a nicety, and there is the truth of, hey, listen, we've had a lot of losing seasons, and this is the first time we've had a winning season. I get that. But here's the deal, guys. This was not a great season. When you look at the season as a whole, this was not a great season. It was a mediocre season. Now, it was good for our learning curve. It was good in that we are going up and to the right. But this is still a mediocre season. By comparison, it was a good season. But overall, we missed the playoffs. We missed going to the big dance. We missed those things. This is not something to sit back and say, hey, this was a great season. It just wasn't, fans. Okay, now this is where you're going to hear me on this side. If you listen to a show that I did a couple weeks ago, I did a show where I talked about, it was a top 5 list, actually. I was doing it by myself, and I talked about Jameis Winston's top 5 leadership moments. And one of the things I talked about in being a leader in that is this thing called a divided satisfaction. That as a leader, you have to be able to celebrate and recognize the victories and the wins that you had for your team in whatever you just came through. But the leader of the team has to be able to look at it and be satisfied that you had whatever victories you did, but be dissatisfied with the fact of what you left on the field. And that's something that I think Dirk Cutter is there. Gerald McCoy was he was wearing a shirt, they said, that said, "I'm not excited." He was being very, very bold and blatant. He was not happy about the fact that they didn't make the playoffs. Jameis Winston said multiple times, he's like, people were asking him, like, hey, how are you feeling about this season? He's like, we didn't go to the playoffs. This season was a failure to me because we didn't make the playoffs. That's our goal is a Super Bowl. You can't get Super Bowl if you don't make the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs, period. And this was and that's great for our leaders to be able to recognize that, say that, and voice it. And Coach Cutter is not going to, in the middle of people, sharing niceties, say, "Oh, stop that. That's not right." But there's just something I feel like I could hear in his voice that was going, "Yeah, well, thanks for calling in. That was a nice compliment." But it really wasn't a great season. So fans, and you guys know me, I'm like Mr. Positivity, right? I think this whole year I've been the guy who looks on the bright side, but I'm going to take this one and say, no, we have to have a divided satisfaction. There was a lot of good things about this season. There's a lot of things that without sugarcoating the season, we can say these are the advancements we made. These are the places we've come. This is the arrow pointing up and towards the right. The trajectory is going in the right way. And at least it wasn't a losing season. No. This was a winning season. All of that's true. And the truth is, it still was a mediocre season. It wasn't great. And we didn't meet our goal. We didn't meet our goal at the end of the season. And so that's what I'm going to rant about, guys. We got to have a divided satisfaction because it wasn't great. And here's the deal. There's only, as a Super Bowl, as an NFL player, NFL means not for long. As an NFL player, they only have so many chances to win a Super Bowl. You know, they're only going to have so many years. Whether it's 5, 6, 10, if you get some of these guys that are in the league for a long time, maybe 13, 14, 15 years in the league, that's only so many chances. And for some of these players, Gerald McCoy, those chances are running out. These guys are getting into the backside of their career. And so if they're going to make a run for the Super Bowl, they've got to start winning now. And they've got to start getting into the playoffs. And it has to happen. And that urgency is ramping up. And so that's my rant. It's not a great season, guys. Let's face it, it really was a mediocre season. Lots of good stuff to point to, but not a great season.
I'm right there with you because I was listening to that same show, and it was getting on my nerves as well. And like you said, it was just a nicety, and I think you're spot on. You could kind of hear as it went on, and each caller kept saying it and saying it and saying it. Like it was kind of taking everything Dirk Cutter had in him to be like whoa. This wasn't a great season. Yeah, it wasn't a great season. If you look at it, the Bucs have been on 41 years. They've had 19 winning seasons. Now, by that standard, as a Bucs fan, yes, that is a great season. We got 9 wins. But if you want to put it up against the elite franchises in the NFL, it's not a great season, and it shouldn't be a great season. Our defense stunk half the year. Our starting running back can't stay healthy. Our second-string running back can't hit a hole. Our best wide receiver, as soon as he catches the ball, looks for a soft place to land in the grass. Our center's too small. Our left tackle's too slow. So I could go on with this rant about why it's not a great season and why we're not a great team. So I'm just kind of bouncing off you with that. But my second one would actually be I'm going on with a rave on this one. A rave with a question mark. If you follow me on Twitter, if you've read my stuff on RealBucsTalk, I'm a very pro Jason Light individual. I've talked about him as like being one of my 3 turning points, his free agency pickups. Now you can be, you can be a really good GM, and it's a lot easier to be a GM when you're picking, twice in the top 40. You get a lot of first top 10 picks. This is a year we'll see Jason Light make his money, I guess, so to speak. We'll see how really good of a GM is now because you're in the second half of the draft. You're at 19. This is where, all the blue chippers, the guys that you plug in, the top 10 guys, the guys are going to start right away. Like, they're all going to be gone. These are guys who are going to take a little development, not necessarily be on, on the field of the first offensive or defensive play of the new season. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm super excited and interested to watch which free agents which free agents he brings back and which ones he brings in. So it's a rave for Jason Light as far as what he's done with the Bucs. I love how he goes back up in the second round. Has done it 2 years in a row to grab the player he wants. But it's going to be harder this year to do that. You're actually going to give up a lot more. Giving up a third round, top 10 pick can get you back into the second round. I don't know, like giving up a third round, bottom third pick can get you back into the second round. So we're going to see, if he's worth his salt this year. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Jason Light. It occurs to me, I think you were alluding to this, that, this is Jason Light's fourth year, which means all of the very first rookies that he drafted that are still with the team, they're in their final year of their contract. Like, this is the year that they can either pick up a 5th-year option on them, or they can extend the contract, or whatever, or they can say, no, we're not going to extend your contract. Maybe they'll do a Doug Martin thing, prove it to us this year. So with that, these are solidly his guys now. And what's he going to do in the free agency? A lot of people, I think, have ideas of what we should do in the draft. And honestly, I think what our needs are in the draft are going to depend on what we wind up doing in the free agency. Like, we have to go through that free agency first before we can prioritize our order of draft needs. And just a hint to anybody who might be listening to this, I'm not going to do a show where we talk about our priority of draft needs until after we get our free agent signed. Because I don't think you can do that. Like, you can kind of do it as it is right now, knowing it'll change, but all of that stuff will change as it goes on. So, we know that it could be, you could go either way, saying Jason Light has been good in free agency or has not been good in free agency. He's had some misses. He's had some big splash plays, so to speak, and how that's going to affect the draft and what that looks like, what he's going to do with these players that he currently has. Man, I think that's right on. And I'm excited. I like Jason Light. I'm a Jason Light kind of guy. I think, and I've said it before, and I'm still going to say it, I think he's the best GM that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have ever had. And I'm excited to see what he can do this offseason, see where we're going to go. I'm more excited for this offseason than I've been for an offseason in a long time. All right, well, I've got one more that I want to get on, and this is a rave/rant, kind of both. I talked about this to some extent on the Instant Cast show, but I just had to bring it up one more time, and I really want to talk about how much Cutter. I just have to give him many, many accolades, and want to rave about how he handled the whole Doug Martin thing. All of this stuff coming on with Doug Martin. Now we don't know all the details of what's going on with Doug Martin. We've heard that Adderall might have been involved. We know that there's PEDs involved. We know that he's going to a treatment facility, whatever that actually means, to get the help he needs to get healthy. We know that he's dealing with issues that are bigger than football, according to Jason Light's statement. There's a lot going on here, and I would dare say that there's a lot going on that we've not actually heard about yet. And that's okay. But how Cutter handled this with saying that, hey, he was a healthy scratch. It was a coach's decision. And, it was the media and it was fans that took him benching Doug Martin during the Saints game that they spun that way out of control. They spun that into Tampa Bay saying that Jacquizz is a better running back now. Cutter was defending Doug, and now he's sitting Doug. They were spinning this all into something, and it turns out what it was a whole nother issue. I dare say, had this issue not come up, Doug Martin still would have been playing with the Saints on that day. But Cutter really took the bullet. He never lied. He never misled anyone. He said what he needed to say. He didn't comment further on it, and it was people who took it and blew it out of proportion. And he knew that was going to happen. Because he's been around long enough, he just understands that. And in my business, in my world, we have a phrase saying he takes the bullet, and that's exactly what Cutter did. Was he took the bullet, So I just want to rave about that. A little bit of a rant on this same topic. Rumors and more have already began to surface about what Doug Martin's deal is, about what some of the PEDs are, or what maybe other substances he may or may not have been using. And I want to encourage everybody who's listening to my voice, don't feed off of that. Don't lead into that. Don't spin that. Don't run the rumor mill with all of that kind of stuff, because it's going to lead to nowhere good. Okay, guys, here's the deal. Doug is getting the help that he needs. And that's all we need to know right now. We can let him tell us when he's on the other side of it exactly what he was going through, if that's what he chooses to do when he gets to the other side of it. All right, but in the meantime, it helps no one. It doesn't help Doug. It doesn't help the team. It doesn't help future prospects, and it certainly doesn't help us as a fan base to speculate or spread rumor. And I say shame on anyone with a voice and a microphone and a pen or whatever that they do that's in Bucs media world, fringe media, true media, or otherwise that propounds this and spreads these rumors and digs in this mill. I say shame on every single one of you guys who do that. This is not the time, it's not the place, and it's not something that's helpful to the organization or to the fan base. So I want to encourage everybody, don't do it. And if you hear it, just ignore it. Just set it off to the side, because that's rumor. You don't know that that's exactly what's going on. And don't get into that. Don't listen to that. Wish Doug Martin well. Hashtag I'm with 22. And I can't wait to see what happens with our running backs for the coming season. So that's my rave/rant as we end out the show here.
Well said.
Thank you. I had to get a drink while you were saying that. So
I should do. Well said.
There you go. But you know, guys, I mean that with everything that's in me. And I really do. And this may stir up some controversy. And I know that I've taken some slack this past week. Some people have called me out. And, you know, that's okay. Because if I'm getting called out, that means that people are listening. It means that I'm at least having an effect. And that's a part of what this show is about. I really do mean what I say. Shame on everyone who spreads rumors, especially if you're just trying to get clicks or you're just trying to get downloads or you're just trying to get people to come to your thing. And I know that, you know, I'm not making a dime off of this. This isn't paying my mortgage, and other people do this for a living that it does pay their mortgage. I get that. But this is not something to mess around with, especially while somebody's in the middle of rehab or somebody's getting the help that they need. So kudos to how they do it, and we'll move on. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up not just this segment, but this episode as well. Just as a final reminder, you can get in touch with me about anything we've talked about, especially if you want to talk about what I just said, over at facebook.com/thepewtercast or on Twitter @thepewtercast. Or if you got some more that you want to say that's more than 140 characters, shoot me an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Ren Daxt, I want to thank you one more time for being on the show with us this week, coming back on the show. You were fantastic the first time. You were fantastic this time. And why don't you tell everybody one more time where they can find you and more of your work out on the internet?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. A lot of fun, as always. I'm a contributing writer to RealBucsTalk. You can find us on Twitter @RealBucsTalk. There's three of us, Michael Pless, Mark Ramirez, and me. I just go by Ren Daxt. I'm kind of like a private guy. You can find me personally at Twitter @Ren Daxt, REN_DAXT. We talk Bucs. We got to be big into the draft. Also in the free agency. Mark Ramirez, he's the one that he's kind of our draft guy. He's the guy that puts together the film, puts together the numbers for us. But what Bucs fans may like, we won't be doing any draft grades on quarterbacks. We won't be doing any draft grades on, guards. We're only be doing things that we think the Bucs are going to be looking at. Obviously, we'll be doing a lot of work on wide receivers. We're doing a lot of work on safeties. Now we'll probably have to be doing a lot of work on running backs, tight ends, positions like that. It's for the fans. We're very active, 2 to 3, sometimes 4 posts a week. So there's always something refreshing and new. It's not one of those places where, you say I talk Bucs and you put something up once every 2 weeks. We're really dedicated. We love the Buccaneers. And like I said earlier in the show at the beginning, we're gaining traction. A lot of people are liking what we're doing. And if you haven't heard of us or haven't seen us, give us a try.
Yeah, and something I'll say just to plug you guys a little bit more is, we have seen, especially with the uptick in Buccaneers, the way the Bucs have been doing this year, there's been this plethora of new Bucs media or fringe media outlets that have come online this year. And the good ones that are out there, that are around, they're big, and there's a lot of people kind of trying to catch up to that. What you guys are doing is you're providing at least a unique look that some of these other guys are just really kind of copying what other guys are doing. You guys aren't doing that. You're not copying what other guys are doing. You're providing a fresh look, and I really appreciate that. So I recommend everybody check them out. Follow them on Twitter, at RealBucsTalk. There's always great stuff that they're putting out, and good opinion pieces for what they have going on. So, Ren Man, thanks again so much for being on the show this week.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, guys, as we kind of close out this final episode of the season, certainly we'll be looking more towards off season. I'm reminded of something that I said earlier in this show, which is to work within the rhythm of the year. Guys, there are seasons to life. There are seasons when everything gets really, really hectic. And then there are seasons when things slow down. There are seasons when more of your time has to be focused in one area of life, and other things may get somewhat a little bit neglected. And you know what? That's okay. That's part of the rhythm of how life works. But there's got to be seasons when things slow down, and those things that might have been a little bit more neglected start getting some more love and tender care. Take advantage of the seasons. Take advantage of the rhythms. Learn to work within them. Because I tell you what, if you're going full tilt 100% all of the time, amping it up and moving on to the next, that's when you burn out. That's when you're no good to anybody. It's kind of like that whole thing on the airplanes when they say put your own mask on first so that you can get some breath so you can help other people. It's kind of that same idea. Well, folks, until next time, I've got just two words I'd like to say to you. Go Bucs.